Hi everyone, my name is Jacqueline Adams, and today we're going to be talking about how to own the room, how to exude that executive presence. As Daryl just mentioned, I would absolutely love it if you all submitted any questions, any information that you'd like to go over or discuss in more detail in the chat section. I do quite a few presentations and I get really bored just hearing myself talk all the time. So it'd be really great if we could get some back and forth going during this presentation this morning. So first of all, why am I talking about executive presence here? How have I leveraged this throughout my career trajectory? So I started out actually in my corporate training career as a Peace Corps volunteer in Tanzania, Africa. So I was teaching high school math in Swahili to classes of 90 students at a time. When I got back to the U.S. 2 years later, I decided to combine my bachelor's of science that I got from Case Western Reserve University with my love of training, and I actually became a corporate engineering trainer. I did that for about 10 years, and then I decided to launch my own company that specializes in transforming corporations through providing better employee learning and development. I've served as a nonprofit leader. I was on the board of directors for Girl Scouts of Northeast Ohio for 3 years, and I served for another 3 years on the Colorado State Science and Engineering Fair. And I'm now a professional blogger and public speaker. So you might have the question, okay, that's great, Jacqueline, but what in the world does being a Peace Corps volunteer have to do with showing your confidence and being able to own a room? Well, when you're looking at a class that has 90 faces all staring at you, it can be a little bit daunting. It can be a little bit intimidating to try to teach mathematics. Or when I was meeting with the local chiefs and tribal leaders in the community, and I was trying to practice my Swahili and my public speaking for the first time, it was really important that even though I might not have gotten every single word accurately, since I was, in many cases, the first foreigner that they'd ever met in this remote village, it was important that I exuded confidence and that I was friendly and that I was engaging. So this has been fundamental. And I think, at least in my career trajectory, the background, the hard skills that I learned with my computer engineering degree were fundamental. They were very important, and I'm not trying to downplay that. But my ability to create a presence is what's helped me take my career to the next level. So as I've already mentioned, I do have a blog. So if you go to that insight.ieeeusa.org and you look up lessons on leadership, I have this whole leadership hacks column based on my past experiences and my past roles and my current experiences in everyday life. So it'd be cool if you want to follow that. Okay. So kicking off this presentation, what's in it for you all for attending this? As I've mentioned, being able to exude confidence can help further your career and open up new doors. It also can increase your own confidence in how you present yourself in your own personal life, and it's just a great skill to have. It's been interesting for me as I've watched the different roles I take on, how I've been able to leverage that in my personal life, dealing with any conflicts, trying to help out in my community, volunteer efforts. It's not just when you practice these skills that you can apply it in one specific category, but it actually makes you a better holistic, better well-rounded leader overall. And some people say that some skills cannot be learned, that you just have to be a natural-born leader. I think that this is a skill that can be learned. This is a picture of me in the top left corner as taken in 8th grade. Those are actually my classmates that's not a picture with a big sister or something like that. So I was very confident that I would when I was younger, but I didn't necessarily have that executive presence. So that's definitely something over the past 2.5 decades that I've had to work on and build up and continue to practice. And I hope I'm continuing to get better at this as I advance in my career. So as I was mentioning, this presence can be learned over a time. It is a skill that can and should be practiced. So when you're beginning to look at a presentation, or you're thinking about how you're going to discuss something in your next meeting, as a corporate trainer, one thing that I've always had to keep in mind is my audience's demographics. Actually, I've done this as a corporate trainer and as a public speaker. So some of the things that I consider are the age of the audience that I'm speaking to, the gender, the nationality. So for example, when I was doing classes as a corporate trainer in Japan, that looked different than when I was doing it in the US. So when I was in Japan, I adjusted my vocabulary, I adjusted the rate that I was speaking, and I also made sure my presentations included more schematics, more diagrams, so that I could leverage that when English was not always the first language of my audience. I also kept in mind the level of education. So sometimes in my past, I've been training engineers, and sometimes I've been training technicians who have a high school degree. So the type of language I use is also very different for those two different groups. I've also leveraged hobbies. So sometimes when I'm meeting with different groups, I know that they're more mechanically inclined. So I might compare something that we're working on in class to a car part in order to serve as a better example. Or we'll talk about hobbies and engage in, I engage in a lot of outdoor activities in order to be able to relate to my audiences. So hobbies and skills can be very helpful when you're trying to just relate to your audience. And obviously occupation is very important here too. So sometimes when I am talking to an audience, I just was at that construction conference that we saw a picture of a couple slides back. And so I have been in my past a home theater installation general manager. And so even though that's been a number of years, I was able to tap into that side versus more of my engineering background. So a lot of this is making it relatable and specific and customized to that audience. So you can always reuse or recycle a presentation, but it's really important to make sure it's relatable for that audience. Otherwise, it's really understandable when that audience gets bored or doesn't engage with the topic if you didn't take the time to personalize it for them. So start with a solid opening. I remember my first job as a corporate trainer at Philips Healthcare. I was so nervous before I was about to teach my first class, and so I was talking to some friends, and they said, start with a joke. That's a great way to engage with your class, especially if you're nervous. That was not the best advice for me because I am not naturally funny that way. So I didn't want to come off as inauthentic. So that doesn't work for me. Maybe it'll work for you, but it is really important to start with a solid opening. I remember one time I was giving a speech at Toastmasters. I don't know if you're all familiar with that forum, but it's a national, I think it's an international group where you're given the chance to practice your public speaking. And quite a few people had already been giving speeches before I had, and I knew that it was going to be, one of many speeches given that day. So I started out by saying, Jamani, habari nzuri, mimi ninaitwa Jacqueline, leo nitazungumza kidogo kwa somo hii ya kilugha ya my life. And that was, or I think I ended there in English, but what I was trying to do there was just to recognize that, I wanted to be slightly unique. I didn't want to go too far with it, but saying a couple of sentences in Swahili and then talking about how living in Tanzania for 2 years, that was the subject of my speech, and how that situation impacted my life, made it very pertinent to my presentation, but also gave me somewhat of a unique opening in order to engage my audience and kind of grab their attention. So, skipped a little bit ahead. So start with a solid opening. One solid opening is this with them. We saw this earlier, the what's in it for me. Tell your audience right away what they can hope to get from this presentation that you're giving. Sometimes an effective way can be to start with an overarching question. Why is having executive presence important in your life? And then just let them sit with that for a moment and consider it before you launch into your reasons of why you think it is. Or begin with a brief, relatable story to the topic in order to engage with your audience. When you're giving the presentation, and again, whether this is you speaking in front of your colleagues or you doing a public speaking event, whatever this is, be aware of physical tics. So this can be, I've seen people who are have coins in their pockets or something in their pocket that they're playing with, or playing with a pen, snapping and unsnapping the top of it. That can be extremely distracting for an audience. So just, if you can, practice this and record it, even if it's just like on your iPhone, and try to see if you have any physical tics that might be distracting. That's a good way of identifying these, because sometimes you won't even realize that you're doing it, but the audience will pick up on it super quickly. I love a dynamic presentation. So I know you can't see me here, but my arms are kind of moving around. I'm moving around a little bit. I think standing behind a podium and giving a presentation out to an audience is a very archaic way of giving presentations. It's kind of based on this idea of I talk, you listen, the information is flowing from me to you. I think it shows more confidence when you can be at ease in front of a room. And so for me, that involves walking around, engaging in eye contact with the audience, encouraging questions, and this is just a subtle reminder, there is still that chat box, so if anybody has any questions, I'd still love to hear what you have to say. But I think that creates a much more dynamic, engaging presentation for the audience. One thing I've noticed too, if you're giving a presentation, now as a corporate trainer, some of the classes I've taught are, they've been up to 6 weeks long. That's a whole lot of time in a classroom. And so occasionally after lunch is over and that food comatose sets in, I've had students start to drift off in the classroom. And one way that I will engage them without calling them out too much publicly or shaming them is I'll just walk towards them a little bit. And as I'm walking towards them and they're hearing the volume of my voice increase, or I'm kind of leaning over them a little bit, they naturally wake up. Or if they had been on their phones, especially during a critical piece of information, it really pulls their attention back to you. So it's really nice to be aware of these somewhat subtle, maybe not very subtle, but somewhat things that you can do that are nonverbal during the presentation to help make sure that the audience is receiving all of the very pertinent information you're trying to give to them. Now, all of this being said, be aware of overdoing it. I remember it during one of the training sessions I gave earlier on. Some of the people in the group afterwards came up to me and they told me that my hands were going all over the place and I was flopping them up and down because I was really passionate about this topic. They said that I looked like a duck that was trying to take off. So not the best description, not exactly what I was going for. I'm glad that they picked up on my passion for the topic, but you also don't want to be distracting by overdoing any of this body language. So be aware that body language is a very vital tool when doing public speaking, but also be aware not to take it to the other extreme. So one way of getting better at this is have somebody in the group give you feedback or using your phone, recording it, and reviewing that so that you can see what you look like. So engage with your audience. Yeah, so I'm really big on this. Like I said, I think questions make it a lot more interactive. So it's not uncommon for me to start off with a question to my audience, one of those overarching questions, or if it's more of a technical topic, like I am doing a training, one thing I'll do is I'll ask a validating question. So I'll give them quite a bit of information, and then I'll throw out a question to the audience and see what kind of information they give back to me. Or if I have an audience member ask me a question, I'll actually pass that along to another person in the group and see if they feel comfortable answering it. Now, that being said, here's a part about this that's pretty tricky. I only pass it along to another person if I already am confident that I know the answer, because you never want to get called out on in front of a group. So I think there's a big difference here between being confident and being, shall we call it overconfident, cocky? I don't know exactly what that would be. So if I don't know something, one thing that I'll do is I will write it down on the board. If something comes up and I don't have that information for that audience at that particular period of time, I'll write it on the board, I'll write it on a piece of flip chart paper, I'll wait till the break and see if I can contact a subject matter expert on that. And if there's no break and I don't have that opportunity, I'll let the audience know how I'll follow up with them in getting that to them later on. So I never recycle a question if I don't know the answer as a lazy move, because if you do that, or else if you give out wrong information to a question, you lose that trust that the audience has for you, and then the audience begins to question, well, can I trust anything she says? Because she made that one up, what else is she making up along the way? So that's really important when you're making it engaging and interactive, is to make sure you're representing yourself well. And sometimes that is admitting that you don't know all of the answers. But the audience is okay with that level of authenticity. What they're not okay with is losing confidence in you as a speaker and as an expert. So read body language and comment about it when appropriate. Let's clarify what this means here. So for me, since I'm used to giving presentations to an audience, I'm scanning the room, looking to check out, get a pulse check on my audience's body language. So when I'm telling a story or when I'm trying to make a point, I'm checking to see if my audience is nodding their heads, if they're maybe smiling a little bit, what it is that they're doing. If I'm making a point and I can see somebody's brow furrowing, I think I nailed it there. Okay, then I'll say, hey, you look a little bit confused. Did I lose you at some point? What's going on there? I make comments about body language along that line. I'm not going to try to, again, I'm not about public shaming. I'm not about calling somebody out. But if I can read the signals that they're sending me and comment on it, then I try to make that part of just doing that pulse check. Obviously, in a webinar, it's a little bit tricky because I can't see y'all's faces. And so you just have to work with the forum and what you've got. With respect to taking breaks, I've actually heard some people that give longer presentations or technical training instructors say, oh yeah, I talked to them for hours, we didn't even take a break. And my question is, why? Why would you do that? I don't think it's a rite of passage. I don't think it's necessarily anything to be proud of. It sounds like a not great experience for your audience. I would much rather take breaks, especially if I'm going to be giving a presentation over a couple of hours. I'll let my audience know, hey, every half an hour, every 45 minutes, we're going to take a 10-minute break. So that way, if you need to make a phone call, if you need to visit the restrooms, there's a time and place for all of that without you having to worry about missing something from this presentation. So I think it's just a matter of setting up that forum so you can be, your audience can be present for what you have to say. So some common presentation mistakes. I have been doing public speaking for a while, but I still have to remind myself to breathe. Sometimes, especially when I'm a little bit nervous, when I'm excitable, I can just rush right through an entire presentation because I want to make sure I do it and that it's done and I can check that box and it's over. But it really is important just to breathe and to stay present in the moment. And yeah, it's just critical, and it's just a big mistake that happens. Again, like I said, I do this, and I've seen a lot of other presenters just rush right through the whole thing. With respect to not over-focusing on your role, one of my pet peeves is when somebody's been asked to give a presentation and they walk up to the stage and the first thing that they say when they've got the microphone is, hey, I was just asked to give this presentation 10 minutes ago. I'm not sure what I'm going to say, but I'm just going to wing it and we'll go from there. And I'm like, ugh, what? First of all, you just threw the people facilitating this under the bus, so that's not very cool. And secondly, I mean, it doesn't come off as very professional. So you just pretty much told me that I need to lower my expectations of what you're going to be saying to me for the next 10 minutes, half hour, hour. And I'm really, at that point, I kind of tune out a little bit. So if you do decide to give a presentation, if you are asked at the last minute, decide for yourself whether you're going to say yes or no to that role. And then once you do say yes, commit to it. So don't provide everybody with background information. I've even seen this in the corporate setting where I've seen some of the engineering trainers say, oh, this part isn't very good, engineering slacked off on this, or marketing was supposed to provide us this information. No, that's not good. You're trying to blame this on someone else, but you're making the whole company look bad just to save your own face. So be a professional, present the information as you have it, and go from there. Other components to think about when you're doing a presentation, try to begin on time. It's really important. Again, it's just more respectful of the audience's time for you to begin on time. Also, if you're giving them a break, make sure you say, hey, we're going to start again in 10 minutes. Maybe sometimes it's helpful to say we'll start again at like 12:30. Give the group a specific time and then do that so that you're being respectful of your audience. Preparation of material. So if you're doing a PowerPoint, have that pulled up and ready. If you got any props, that you're going to be showing during the presentation, have that readily available. It's kind of awkward for your audience. If you're struggling to find things during a presentation, they're aware that you're just taking up time and space when you're mentioning stuff as a sidebar as you're going through your drawers. So make sure you just have that available. We've already talked a little bit about proper ways to handle questions that come up. Like I said, questions come up. Sometimes it can be nice to redirect them to leverage those to get more audience engagement. But make sure you do, in one way or another, answer the questions of your audience. Have a clear task, a clear message. This is incredibly important both in my writing as well as in my public speaking. It's great to tell a story, it's great to engage, but you have to bring it back to something purposeful and meaningful to your audience. And then we've already talked about the importance of body language here, both how it can be, unfortunately, take away from your presentation or how you can leverage it to actually add to your presentation. So here is just a reminder about my Leadership Hacks blog. That's the end of my presentation. I'm not seeing any questions as of yet, but I would really love to hear if there are any questions from the audience.
Yeah, Jacqueline, there are no questions as of yet, but I have a question. Is that okay?
Please.
All right. So what if I'm giving a presentation and I stumble over some information that, I'm supposed to be the expert on? Is there a way to regain the audience trust and regain that executive presence while still giving the presentation, or is it something you should just rush through and try and get over with after you stumble like that?
Should you rush through or run off the stage? Yeah.
Yes.
So help me out here. I love this question. Do you mean that you're fumbling over your words? Do you mean that you're...
fumbling over your words, and maybe possibly confusing something you said, and then you stop and try and pull yourself together. You know it, but you haven't presented it in a clear way.
You know what? And I love what you just said there. Stop and pull yourself together, because I think that is really the best advice. In the past, when I've done this, few and far between, let's pretend it's been, is I say, wait a minute, and I take a deep breath, I let it out, and sometimes even your audience will laugh, because the great thing is once you own that moment, it does make you more relatable to your audience. They appreciate that you're showing that you're just human and that you are willing to admit, okay, a thing just happened, I'm going to own that thing. But it's still most important. I'm prioritizing getting this information to you. So after I have a second to breathe, and I don't overdo it, I don't make a big deal about it, but I do take one deep breath and I say, let's try that again. And then every time that I've had that happen, I'm able to retry and present it to the group in a much more cohesive fashion. And like I said, usually we laugh it off. Somebody will approach me during break time and we'll have a giggle about it. But the audience has usually responded very positively when that happens.
Okay. Well, that's good. I'm still not seeing any questions. I'll pose one more question if the audience doesn't mind. In your speaking style, I see that you have a very joyous, sort of a very, not bubbly, but very vibrant speaking style in terms of the way you give a presentation. Is that necessary to come across and present the information in a relatable way, or does everyone have to have their own style to speak? Speaking, I should say.
Daryl, I'm smacking my forehead now because I cannot believe that I did not include that in this presentation. Okay. I think having a passion for your topic does show through. I absolutely love what I do. I love that I've gotten to be an engineering trainer because it combines my passion for engineering with my love of training. And so I do get this piece of feedback on a regular basis from audiences. They say that they can tell that I'm super psyched about what I do day in and day out. And it is more, engaging for the audience then. So I don't think everybody needs to present the way that I do. And thank goodness a lot of people don't present the way that I do, by the way, because life is more interesting that way. But I think that, when you are passionate about what you talk about, it does show through. And so I think that does help with engaging your audiences. Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful point.
All right. Cool. I'll ask everyone else if this is your last chance to submit questions, and if anyone's typing while they're doing that, Jacqueline, I'll give you, I want to say thank you for being a presenter for IEEE USA, as well as doing writing for IEEE USA Insight. And if you have any last words, you're welcome to share them.
I really appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity to write for IEEE USA Insight. I think that it's wonderful that IEEE does so much to share these ideas and get them out there.
All right, well, cool. Well, I'm not seeing any questions, so again, I want to thank you so much for giving this presentation. The presentation has been recorded, so we will put it up online within the next few days for people to view it on demand. And thank you so much, Jacqueline. I'm going to go ahead and end this, and we appreciate it so much, okay?
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. I'm ending the webinar. Thank you so much.